goblin paladin who wore like ratted out vestments over some really shiny plate armor he had stolen off a corpse. And it was a very fun character to play, because one of my big things I always maintain is if you're running a new game, running a game for new players, you never want your players to feel like they can't be ridiculous. As a result, you want somebody who's going to be the most ridiculous person at the table. And it gives everybody else the permission to be silly. So, as a result, you had Chonk, who spoke with a really, really squeaky voice. 4 more of that one. I can't remember which way it went first, but basically at the end of the day, the joke was that it was a character, Mas Ombru. Very much homebrew. And our goal became trying to get them to say Ombru on stream, and we actually managed to make them do it, which was phenomenal and hilarious because they were not a very nice person. They were a bad DM, and basically shortly after that campaign ended, they pretty much saw themselves out of every possible community, which was hilarious. So yes, Ombru is what if that was home. Yeah, top of the combat. It says don't line up, and then does. Like, you know, because it's not like they were worried about metagaming in that aspect of, like... But, you know, I don't think it's a terribly difficult thing to assume that a dragon's going to have some kind of line attack. I will say, Kenny told me about when he ran a Shardland Dragon for his party. And I actually thought it was really interesting, because basically, they were beating the snot out of the dragon, having a good fight. And he basically went, you guys are a little over leveled for this, so I want to see what this actually looks like. And he had the dragon take off, and the DM was not very good. They didn't really know what they were doing. And they just had the book open and were reading from it. And you could tell that they never actually read the module ahead of time, because they also had a reading voice, when you could tell that they were very clearly reading out of the book. And we made a point of saying, like, oh, hey, you know, like, because they claimed that, you know, oh, the players do whatever they want and things go crazy and everything like that. And we're like, yeah, but dude, you've been playing this, like, by the book. It's like, oh, no. I've homebrewed the shit out of this campaign. They're like, you do realize we have the book open in front of us, right? Oh, well, explode midair, and the two pieces came down, the front half and the back half. And basically, like, the front half was the head that couldn't move around but had, you know, the beam attack and the aura and that kind of stuff. And then the body didn't have the beam, didn't have the aura, but it had a lot of hit points and it could hit like a truck. I love how that British. I want to work with my players so that they have the most fun possible. And there's not even really tournaments in D&D. Like there's Adventurers League play, but that's not even really tournament. That's just that's just group play that's been organized by modules organized by Wizards of the Coast. And those modules suck, I would like to say. They're terrible, and I never want to run one or play in one. But, like, there isn't really and that fell into the danger space. It wouldn't be so dangerous if we didn't have binder clips on here. Realistically, I need to remake the master for this with the moth being a lot thinner, a lot more shallow rather. But that's okay. We will get there. It is a fairly big balance change because fire is resisted by the most creatures in the game, right? As a result of that, that means that, on average, they will do more damage to any given random monster in the game, which seems like a potentially big deal. However, I don't know about your games. I'm not pulling random monsters from the from the monster manual. I'm not grabbing random monsters. I'm creating my encounters. So it doesn't matter what random monsters or any aggregation of monsters is resistant to. And also, I make the rules. Guess what? That ancient dragon, yeah, they were bullied as a kid and grew up. An active project in the electronics land is a keyboard shaped like a paw, and we're doing a custom PCB and setting it up with QMK and doing all the 3D modeling, etc., etc. I think I might actually have some D2s that might be worth sending out of the house here shortly. We'll see how well they polish up. A little wind today, which was we're getting ready to ship a new product that I did the firmware and versions 2, 3, and 4 of the electronics. The very first iteration was done by somebody else, and then I basically reworked the whole thing to meet our. Than what we do is homebrew because it's very clearly different, and yeah, so we ended up like one of my favorite pieces of homebrew is probably the Way of the Bob Monk, which was a lot of fun. Carrot is playing a Furbolg monk in the Witchlight campaign, and yeah, homebrew is the joy of making things ridiculous, right? What does homebrew mean to you? Uh, it's the feeling in your heart. But yeah, like for instance, Carrot's monk subclass that we created for them is Carrot wanted to play monk because monks are in theory really cool. Um, at a lovely Yeah, it's a little goblin paladin that was designed for keeping the party alive for some first-time players. And Twilight clerics are particularly good at that. They are very, very, very strong at. They have some auras that allow people to max out healing, and they have an aura that maxes healing and also gives 10 hit points every round, and that's a passive thing that doesn't need to be re-upped or anything. So it's a pretty strong piece overall. Yeah, and then Carrot kept running away, which is fine. Whatever. But, yeah, they were whoa. Songs of the Spellbound Sea. Yeah, I backed a module called Songs of the Spellbound Sea, which is super interesting and is largely, go figure, based around piracy and pirates and pirate crews and the like. What's my favorite piece of homebrew to date? Great question. Those are a little lifted. I did not push that lid down hard enough. That one's better. Favorite piece of homebrew to date? Is not always the easy part to balance for. Like, for instance, one of my players, they have a character who's a sorcerer, which basically means to be viable, they largely should probably have Fireball, right? They're a forest fae. They're a fairy. Fireball is a little bit horrific in their view, but they're all about manipulation and illusion and stuff like that. So they asked me if we could reskin Fireball to be psychic instead. And there was, so there was the question of like, can we make it a different damage type? Because doing fire damage isn't really what my character would do. And my favorite part of messing around with the D2s is just running a little Hot Wheels car around the track. It does clutter around a bit, but that's okay. Just need. The problem is they can oftentimes feel a little lackluster, especially in low levels. And given that this is a fairly low level campaign, we're like 2 years into it and we just hit level 7. You can't have a class that feels terrible at low levels if you're going to be spending the entire campaign at low levels. So we changed it, and it basically is like a wild magic monk that is built around the idea of protecting their friends. And it is fantastic. And it has been a lot of fun to revisit and go after. It doesn't they don't really care much about psychic damage. Like, it doesn't matter. And people get really weird about some of this stuff. And they forget that, you know, you're playing a game, something that's supposed to be fun and enjoyable for you and everybody else. Like, we're all gathered around a table talking about make-believe characters and rolling random pieces of plastic to get numbers and figure out what we're doing, right? Like, it's not a big deal. Really isn't. And it shouldn't be. They were like, yeah, pretty much all of their powers required minions, hirelings, whatever. All of their stuff was like stage directions, directing other people to do stuff. But none of them actually lived long enough to do anything because they had to rush up the stairs to get into the room. At which point, that was going to be the end of their turn. And then we started pulling some really crazy stuff to be like, okay, so some AoE stuff? AoE? Yeah, great, awesome, lovely. And just absolutely destroyed them. So the DM had a rough time that one, but that was fun for us. More damage against the monsters guy. Thanks, Ariel. Welcome in. Lovely to see you. We're sanding dice today because we've got an in-person sale on the weekend. And we're trying to get some stuff ready. Currently, we're talking about Killjoy DMs and novelty dice. But yeah, like, so the thing is like, my player asked me if they could reskin Fireball to be psychic damage. And if you look, you know, from a sheer statistics standpoint, I'm Mothman, otherwise known as, and had a revolver that they weren't proficient in. That sounds super fun. We just recently fought a big boss in our Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign, which was a lot of fun as well. And the party really did a fantastic job of divide and conquer, where my player spent the entire time destroying the equipment that was making them powerful. Carrot's character got in melee and just tied them up, and they kept summoning minions, and everybody else was like, no, I don't think you're allowed to have minions. And the DM after the fact is like, looking at it, switching from fire damage over to psychic is actually a fairly substantial balance shift within a certain aspect. Now, the reason I say it's a balance shift is specifically because fire is one of the most... it is the most resisted elemental damage in the game. Once you discount, like piercing, bludgeoning, slashing from non-magical types. Fire is resisted by the most creatures. Okay. So switching from fire over to psychic, those people are now rolling coal. We do all sorts of random stuff here. We do 3D printing, we do dice making, we do electronics and engineering. We're currently partway through that is a chonk dice. A very pretty one at that. Yeah, it's this very pearly, teal, pinky situation. Very, very pretty. So outside of this, our current... Is that better, Carrot? It basically means that if I want to be able to hear anything in OBS, I have to have my sounds turned right up, and then if anything outside of OBS plays, then I get my ears blown out, which is always fun. Well, I guess that means that you you FK for 5 minutes and missed a bonk. Follow the Franco! Welcome in, Franco. Good to see you. But basically, they were talking about how, they homebrewed the shit out of this game, and we laughed at the fact that no, you haven't. You haven't changed anything. And it became one of those things that was a bit of a meme, right? You got homebrew, and then that ended up turning